Well, we find ourselves in southern Utah.
Oh boy.
Kind of more or less southern Utah. This is southern Utah. This over yonder is Cedar City. And Cedar City is definitely southern Utah, kind of the gateway to a couple of different national parks and national monuments. Cedar Breaks and so on.
Yes.
And also the home of the Cedar Breaks fire.
I was thinking of the college.
Yeah, well, there's that too, but there was one of the nation's biggest wildfires that's been burning right over there.
Yes.
And they now have that out, fortunately.
Right.
But it burned all the way from this mountain range over to the next mountain range. Just, I don't know how many acres. Big fire. Big fire.
Yes.
All gone out now. So we've come down to Cedar City to check out a wee bit of its history because it has some illustrious history in the mining of iron.
Yes.
This being Iron County.
Right.
And some other interesting history here as well. But the number one thing we came down here to check out is the manufacture of train parts for scale models, mostly in large scale, but moving out into all the way down to N scale.
Yes, itsy bitsy teeny weeny.
Itsy bitsy teeny weeny, but cast metal bits and pieces, decals, photos, CDs.
Yes.
It's a ponderous line of stuff, and this guy Dave makes it. So we're going to go over to Dave's facility and look at all this incredible modeling stuff that he does for scale model trains. So check this out. Well, before we head over to Ozark, we wanted to check out the local museum. It's called the Frontier Homestead State Park. This way we could pick up a little history and background on the area. What do you think of this huge electric shovel?
Well, I don't know.
£250,000 here, 250,000 pounds. And along with mines, there are always railroads. There was a railroad spur driven in here, and before that it was on the stagecoach lines. The original settlers down here were, of course, the Mormon pioneers that had come to the area, and Brigham Young had sent a bunch of them down here just to mine iron because they needed iron for their survival in the wilderness. The Mormons had created their own weird and unique alphabet, and that's what they were teaching the kids to read and write with, was the Deseret alphabet. So Dave keeps animals at his place. I mean, it is an incredibly rural area after all.
We're coming over if you're not.
Don't you just love the miniature horses and donkeys?
Yes, they're cute.
So this is Dave Rhoton. This is his operation. It started off as this one company called Ozark Miniatures. This is their urethane casting area.
And I think all industry is going to come to it, is that you've got to be able to produce smaller quantities and still keep it profitable. So that's one of the big things we've been working on.
Dave's got the whole family involved. This is his son Jared, who's taking a very active role right now. But I think all the kids have worked out here at one time or another. Here in the urethane casting area, they use these rubber molds, and then they fill those with a 2-part urethane, and then that has to be placed under high pressure to get rid of bubbles. This is a line of large-scale figures that they produce out of urethane. It seems they started off as like Disney figures for the Polar Express. Not quite sure how that works, but the people who made them sculpted them into these figures, and now they sell them as large-scale train figures. I have bought a few of these, and boy, do they paint up nice. So this is their latest acquisition. It was a company called R&D Unique, and they made a line of products called curbside dioramas in 1/24th scale for the automotive enthusiasts, the scale auto people. As you can see, principally they produced gas pumps, but all kinds of other gas station equipment, air compressors, tools, vending machines, and that sort of thing. And this is their very first line, Ozark Miniatures. It was located, oddly enough, in the Ozarks, and they bought that company and moved it to Cedar City And they make train parts in large scales for the large scale outdoor railroading enthusiasts and so on. These are locomotive builder plates. The patterns for those were made on this machine. It's a precision CNC cutting mill, and they milled out those little builder plates. This thing's highly accurate, right down to about half the width of a human hair. It uses these really fine cutting tools. And then those patterns are placed in rubber molds and cast in white metal. This is their white metal casting facility. That looks familiar, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
We have that out in Garage Mahal, and we did a bit of a show on that. But you can see here how the parts can be mass-produced in white metal once they've made the pattern on the milling machine. It seems they have 2,800 molds for making different products here. 2,800 rubber molds. Not all of the patterns are cut on machining tools. Some of them are made with this machine. This is a 3D printer. This particular one uses stereolithography. It's highly, highly accurate. And the patterns that it makes can be placed in the rubber molds, and then they can be cast in white metal. The molds are made in this machine. It's a press that vulcanizes natural rubber around those patterns. It usually destroys the pattern, but the key is to get the mold, even if it destroys the pattern in the process.
It's a good idea for shelving them too.
And then you can start mass producing these parts in white metal. This is cool. These are Civil War field pieces. They make a line of those in 1/2 inch scale. Now here's a completely different manufacturing process that they use. It's vacuum forming plastic sheets on an industrial vacuum form machine. And they make siding and brick patterns and things like that that you can use on structures. These sheets are layered over other plastic or even over wood as the outside surface. And check this out, they can make windows that way as well, but typically it's more like this. This is a brick pattern that would go on the outside of a structure. They make these things in every conceivable scale, from N scale all the way up through to the very large scales, 1/29th and even 7/8 inch scale. If you wonder how Steve makes those neat cobblestone streets on his railroad, well, there you go, cobblestones. The pattern work here is done this way. You make an original, then they pull a rubber mold off of this, and then plastic is vacuum formed into the rubber mold. The smaller scales are usually cut down into these smaller sheets, but keep in mind, all of this is relative. Something like a lap siding can work in various scales, so what was designed for 1/2 inch scale may work in 20th scale. Now this is another line of products that they have, milled lumber, both scale lumber and siding. Notice that the wood is in two colors here. The darker wood is old growth cedar, and that can be used on outdoor buildings. But they offer scale siding and strip wood in both fir and old growth cedar. The wood is used in their kits, but it's also available just as scale lumber. Comes in a lot of different sizes here, and it's relative to different scales. So you can order, say, 2x12s in 1/20th scale, and they know what size wood you need for that. Old growth cedar is kind of hard to come by. They stockpile it whenever they can find it, and it lives outside here. The wood is cut down into the various sizes and shapes here in the wood shop. The wood is cut into the various sizes of scale lumber. Some of it is cut into sheets, and then later on that will be milled into siding, board and batten pattern or shiplap, something like that. The trick is keeping the cuts incredibly clean so the wood isn't fuzzy. One way to accomplish that is with this machine. It's a precision sander. Now they don't manufacture everything that you see on their website. These Houseworks windows and doors are made by a different company. They simply sell them on their website. But look at the fine precision woodworking here. This is great.
It's just for that reason is they just do such an amazing job.
They also make their own structure kits, which are cut out with a laser. This is the exact same building. It's a saloon in 3 different scales. You see it in 32nd, half-inch, and 20th scale here. Look at the difference in the sizes. That's incredible. A lot of kits are only available in half-inch, and isn't it better to get the correct size? These are the computer-controlled lasers that cut out the kits. Because they're computer-controlled, they can have the machine cut them in any scale that they want. Of course, that means that the various detail parts have to be rescaled as well. Another line of products that they make are decals. In this area, they make dry transfer decals, which are my favorites. I have never quite figured out wet slide decals, but they offer both type of decal. The wet slide decals are made with digital printing on the 2nd floor, which is also where they print out the instructions for their kits at the top of this homemade elevator. They have a dozen or so high-resolution digital printers up here. This one's a rather large format. It's just used for the instruction sheets. These are the wet slide decals that they've produced in every conceivable scale. Now this is what I have bought principally from them, large-scale wheel trucks. These were all part of the Hartford line. They're available in a lot of different scales. These wheel trucks are 20th scale, and that's what we're building is 20th scale railroad, but they come in a lot of different configurations. These are 7/8 N2 wheel trucks for people doing 2-foot narrow gauge. That's becoming quite a popular scale, makes for a really large model. And these are 1/32nd scale standard gauge trucks. A lot of these components were 3D printed and then rubber molds made for white metal casting. It makes for quite a precision wheel truck. This passenger truck is not available yet, they're still working that out. But they do offer more than a dozen different types of wheel trucks, all in the various scales. Up to now, the wheels have been cut by a machinist using a CNC lathe, but that person hasn't been able to keep up with the demand, so they just purchased their own CNC lathe. And once they get that set up, they're going to start cutting their own wheels. And just as they make a line of large-scale structures, they also make a line of passenger and freight cars. They even offer a locomotive. Well, it's sure amazing what a diverse line of products these guys make. And it was fun just to meet Dave and hang out with him here at his facility.
Yeah, I'd like to thank him for letting us come.
That was really nice. And we got to meet all of his different animals too. And I got a big kick out of that. Well, there we have it, Cedar City. Principally, of course, the Ozark Miniatures, which is a whole bunch of different companies, not just Ozark.
Right.
Dave is cool and interesting operation, and we bought a steam tractor while we were there, a Frick steam tractor, and that's going to be a bit of an assembly project when we get back to Garage Mahal. We're going to build the Frick steam tractor.
And that's Frick, not frickin', but
Not
Frick.
frickin', that's just Frick. The frickin' Frick steam tractor. So that's going to be really cool. That was part of the Hartford line that he bought.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
he just keeps buying out more and more little companies and setting them up there in his operation.
Right.
It's really cool to see all the stuff he's making there. And it was kind of fun to see some of the weird iron history of Iron County and Ironton and
Right.
Cedar City.
Right.
So we looked at the beginning of the show at the museum there at downtown Cedar City.
Right.
And so we also drove out to the old Ironton ruins to see what they were recreating there. And old Ironton here is just really, really
It's
neat.
cool. I was astounded.
It's awesome. They've got this cool beehive oven here.
Yes.
And this is where they made charcoal to use in the blast furnace. And the smelter, the foundations and some of the walls are still there for the blast furnace that was recreated in downtown Cedar City with the big water wheel that powers the double pump, air pump that fired air into the furnace to melt the iron, fired by the charcoal being fired in the charcoal kilns. Just fascinating.
Yeah. Wow.
Fascinating.
Totally.
And then there was another building there where they took the pig iron that they made in the blast furnace and cast it into cast iron and forged it into parts and did all kinds of reworking of the iron there in the other building where they had a second furnace
wild. Yeah.
for remelting the iron there
Right.
that came out of the blast furnace and turning that into useful products. Just really neat to see a lot of amazing history around Cedar City here in Ironton and Iron County. Some of the richest iron ore in the world, incidentally, here. They said the ore being mined in these hills around here is over 90% pure iron.
Isn't that amazing?
Some of what they're digging out of the ground is just pure iron.
Yeah.
You pick it up
There it
and
is.
it's, we grabbed a couple little pieces of it,
Yeah.
and it's just chunks of iron
Laying everywhere.
laying everywhere, and yet it's rocks.
Yeah.
But it's not rocks, it's chunks of
Chunks of
pretty
iron.
much pure iron, just as it's dug out of the ground. Really amazing. The mines are open again, incidentally, and but they're not smelting it or doing anything with it here. Geneva Steel, that used to process the ore in Orem, Utah, is long gone, and now they just ship the raw iron to China. They don't even attempt to process it here in the United States, but at least the mines are open again, and they're just sending the raw iron ore to China, where it is smelted and forged and turned into stuff, and then the stuff is sent back here. Well, if you haven't been over to the channel, do pop over to the channel, and you want to subscribe when you're over at the channel. I mean, most of you want to binge watch the 211 movies that are over there.
It's fun.
And but if you're not a subscriber, you want to become a subscriber, and the way to become a subscriber is to click on the blue button that's appearing right now. You ready? Zoink! You see this blue button right here? That blue button says subscribe. If you don't see it, it's because your device doesn't support it, but you can still just navigate over to the channel
Right.
and get there that way. But if you see it on your device, click on that, you're now a subscriber. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here again in 1 week with some more massive screwing around. See you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.